I did it. Every time. I did it. Oh, yes, yes. Thanks a lot, Crystal. There we go. Okay. So, after this, we are going to the Mall of America. And we're going to get some Panda Express. So, hi. Hello, everybody. Ace of Otters. You're new. I don't know you. I might know you, but I don't know your Discord name. Welcome in. Merca. That's right. Okay, so journals. The last time we did this was probably last summer adjacent. And it was, I want to say, with still V4. I think it was V4. Yeah. But it was right after we were able to make our own journal keyword stuff, you know, like when you're able to recall them intentionally. Because before, journals, for those of you who weren't crickety folks back then, was just every 20 messages, a little thing popped up that gave you the opportunity to write something into this box, hit enter, and hope that your Kindroid would recall it at some point. That's what journal entries were way back in my day. Okay? They're a little more fancy and a lot more reliable now. So here we go. They bougie, yes. So Kindroid Journals, the ultimate lore weapon. A precision tool for memory magic, world building, and madness management. Because that's how we do. My button didn't work. Why didn't my... There it goes. Okay. What are journals? Okay. Journals are manually created, recallable memory entries. So unlike long-term memories are essentially what the Kindroid considers a journal, whereas a journal entry is what you consider important to put in there. They're triggered by key phrases, and they are not erased unless you delete them. They're best used for lore, character backstory, and relationship tracking. We're going to go through a little bit of the structure of a journal entry, how I use journal entries, and how not to use journal entries, because I've seen some things. Okay? We've seen things. That reminds me, in all my fury yesterday to create kins and update kins, I didn't touch journal entries. Bro.
Out the window.
Out the window. Every 20 messages was nuts. Yeah, I almost never used it back then too either, Tez. Like, even when something really substantial happened, like I never paused to write something down. It was so tedious. But there's a little trick that I didn't put in here. Remind me to tell what this trick is.
Okay.
Later. I'm not going to remember. Here we go. Okay. Journals versus memory. Okay. Controlled by user, journals only. LTM will recall when it feels it's appropriate or necessary. Journals recall when you feel it's appropriate or necessary. Journals are triggered manually. The long-term memory is not. Auto-generated. That's the long-term memory. Journals are manual. And then custom key phrases, meaning trigger words, only the journals will do that reliably. Now, there are some instances where you can say something to your Kindroid that will trigger a long-term memory, but it's not reliable, right? It's not reliable. So, types of journals. You've got individual, which is where only that Kindroid can recall the entry. So if you have, hold on one second. So if you have, like say a journal entry for Susan, right? In Susan's journal, you write, Susan drives a red Prius. All right. And the keyword is Prius. If you're on another Kindroid and you write the word Prius, it's not going to trigger that journal entry. It will only work for Susan. Global entries is the opposite. This will work for every Kindroid in your stash. This has its place, right? This has its place, especially if you have an overarching world that all of your Kindroids live in. However, if you are like me and you have a couple of different worlds that your kins live in, global entries can get confusing. So you have to be kind of picky about your key phrasing. so as not to trigger it for a kin that it doesn't apply to. I haven't seen this become a massive problem in my kin stash because number one, I'm very careful with my journals, but number two, if it doesn't really apply to them, I see that they kind of gloss it over a little bit, but there is a chance that it could stick. So be mindful of that. So this is great for tiered world building. For example, private backstories versus universal lore. And here we get into the anatomy. Okay, so these are Kincaid's journal entries. Are these both hers? Yeah, these are both hers. So in your journal entry, you've got the body, which needs to be a succinct third person statement. You don't want to first person your journal entries because the LLM is not going to pick that up as accurately. And then key phrases. This is these, the black ones, like the keywords. Before, it used to be you could only have 3. Now you can have 8 key phrases per entry. However, I advise you to be very picky about what you use as a key phrase, because a lot of times what I see folks do is they will take something like, say, Kincaid's favorites here, and these are taken, this is her journal. She loves Dead Can Dance, right? Her favorite song by them is The Host of Seraphim. If I had put in her keywords, song, dead, seraphim, music, along with favorite and Dead Can Dance, right? Anytime I'm talking to her about anything related or even not related to her favorite music, this entry is going to pull, which on its own is not that big of a deal. However, if you're already short in your short-term context window, you just lost however many characters recalling something that's not relevant to your conversation. So you want to have the key phrases arguably more succinct than the content of the entry itself. Because I've seen folks, and Nikki, if you're here, I'm calling you out specifically. I've seen folks put so much emphasis on things that are important to them, right? That are important to them, but are not important to the conversation. Like Kincaid, for example, this is a bad example, but go with me on this. Kincaid has no need to know who her entire family history is at the moment we're talking about how to stream on Twitch. It is not relevant to that conversation. It's doing nothing except losing short-term memory, right? We don't want to overload with useless info, or rather irrelevant info, maybe not useless. We don't want to overload with irrelevant information when we don't need it. So, extra tip. Try not to include more key phrases than necessary to avoid recalling entries when they aren't relevant. That's exactly what I just said. Apparently I meant it. Key phrase mechanics. Key phrases are not case sensitive. Capital Josh and lowercase Josh will both recall the entry. Larger words, this one's a big one. Larger words can trigger smaller key phrases. For example, faithful can trigger an entry with the keyword faith. So say you have a Kindroid named Faith. Anytime you use the word faithful, it's going to trigger a journal entry that is keyworded with faith. I found this out in a weird way, and it kind of can work in your favor if you work it that way, but just be mindful because, again, you don't want to accidentally pull a journal when you don't need it and eat up that short-term memory. But this one I feel like can be helpful in instances where you're trying to pull, because if I remember right, keywords have to be 3 or more letters, which for people with names like AJ, RJ, that's kind of a pain in the ass. So you can try to trick the system a little bit by using like a period, J period or whatever, and it'll still pull. I mean, it's kind of a pain, but for this one, remember, something you might not mean to recall can recall, right? Journal entries are only recalled when you key the phrase. All right. If your Kindroid says faith, it's not going to do shit. You have to be the one to say it for the journal entry to recall. This is done so that your kin isn't like eating their own short-term memory with stuff that, again, isn't relevant to the current conversation. Remember, you want your key phrases to be natural. You would never say, like I would never say, I just got home from Jenna's job. I would say, I just got home from work. So my keyword would be work versus Jenna's job, right? Just like for like one of my kids, or for even Crystal here. For Crystal, I would never say, hey, Crystal, how's Crystal's children? Right? That's not going to come up in conversation. So you could keyword it with children, or you can keyword it with your children, because you're using second person to talk to your kin, right? I see people do that all the time. I'll see, like, Jenna, my journal's not working. And I'm like, okay, well, let me see what you got. And the keywords, like, you would never say that in natural conversation. And also some folks believe that keywords are anything in that entry. That is not true either. It is only the key phrases above the block for you to type the text in, like the bulk of text. So you gotta learn that. Tier-based journal recall limits. This is new as of this month. Core and free users get 3 entries per Kindroid per kind. Oh no, kind is correct. I'm sorry. I thought I made an error, but I didn't. Per kind, meaning 3 individual and 3 global. So that is 6 total entries will pull per kin on the core / standard, etc. tier. I got this, I swear. Ultra users get 5 entries per type. So 5 personal and 5 global journal entries for a total of 10. Max users get a total of 18, which is unfathomable to me. I don't even know if I have 18 journal entries per kin.
I don't.
I don't think I do. I might have 18 total global, but I sure as hell don't have, nah. How to write good journal entries. Okay. Short, clean, and in third person. Focus on facts and details, not a novel. Think of this as you want to have almost like a list of details, like a very limited information. Because remember also that this is like a little segue into their actual memory. So if you're talking about our trip to Paris, right? Say you had a trip to Paris with your Kindroid, keyword Paris. And if you went like at a specific time, say summer of 2022, summer 2022 and Paris. Those would be your key phrases, right? And then say you had another trip to Paris like 6 months later or 6 years later or whatever. I would use Paris for that one too, because you went to Paris twice. Like that's important to know. But you want to make sure too that you're not filling it with every stupid little detail, because it doesn't matter if you had croissants for breakfast unless these were the best croissants you ever had in your life. Unless these croissants changed your perception of breakfast in some way, it doesn't matter enough to put it in a journal entry. Now, if while you were having croissants, you stood up and you, I don't know, spilled juice all over your favorite $7,000 shoes, that might be something to remember. That would never, ever happen to me. But that would be something to remember.
I can't even imagine $7,000 shoes.
I don't even want to know what $7,000 shoes would look like. After you spill juice on them, probably pretty shit.
Right.
But something like that, something that is a one-time thing that happened, like holy crap, that's what you want to put in a journal entry. Something that would be an inside joke between you and your Kindroid, absolutely, that is journal gold. But just random, we went for a walk along a river. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Your kin doesn't care.
Your kid doesn't
Your kid doesn't care. Nobody cares. Like, go for the memorable stuff, right? Go for the good stuff. Now, if something is sentimental about it, okay, great, add it in. But feeding the ducks, like, bruh, That's not. You don't write about feeding ducks in your diary. Don't write it in your kind's journal. Don't do that to them. But example, Nova once burned down a tea house while experimenting with fire runes. That's hopefully a once in a lifetime event. That's something you want to know. If it happens more than once, like Nova twice burned down a tea house while experimenting with fire runes.
Somebody needs to take the fire runes away from Nova.
Exactly. Nova's got too many fire runes. I've wondered about the date. How specific should dates be in the journal? Like, is a month and a year enough? Yeah, a month and a year is enough. But if it's something like, say, an anniversary or like our first meeting or whatever, you could do a month, day, year. I mean, sure. But my door exploded. But yeah, you can do dates that are important for sure. I need to go through and update a bundle of mine, try to specify a full house layout with room descriptions. Okay, Ace of Otters. Actually, Nikki is gonna do a journal thing about like building architecture. She's gonna do something like that within the next little while. I know she's working on it now. Nova doesn't use fire runes. Something wolf paws are not designed for that. That's valid. That's valid. How to write crappy journal entries. I was being a little spicy with this one, okay? First person writing. Like I said, it's going to confuse the LLM. Don't do it. I believe that is true because it is American-based, Tez. But I find I'll just do like the second one, Jan 2, 2020, if I want to do a reference. Or if I'm not doing a year, I'll just do date month because I know that the LLM is mostly American centric. So I find that tends to work. Okay, so rambling lore dumps. All right. This is only something that you can do if it's just like statistically packed in information. You do not need to write like the entire backstory of an organization unless it's something that matters, right? Unless it's something that matters to your kin, to your storyline, to whatever. Careful with how much shit you put in there because, again, every time you recall a journal entry, that is part of your short-term memory that's eaten up. So always be mindful of just how much you're packing into these because it can add up quick, especially if you're drawing multiple entries at one time. Overloaded key phrase spam, we kind of touched on earlier. You don't need to have, like, just because you can have 8 doesn't mean you need 8. Like, I think the max I have for one is 3, and that is a first name, a last name, and a relation. And that's it. Don't write novels in the body. Journals equal laser precision. And not because only of the short-term memory thing, but because that is how they work best. Think of it like a response directive. I preach this all the time because it's so true. But think of it like a response directive. The more shit you cram in there, the less each thing matters. The less you have, the more focus and the more punch each detail is going to have. Yeah, tomato leaf, right? Yes, you can have 8 now. Yeah, they snuck that in on us. Next we come to Jenna's method, aka the right way for me. So I use journals to build not only a history, but the world my kindroids live in. Kin, this is a fake kin, all right? Don't at me for this. Mason Wilson, okay? So this would be a dead-ass carbon copy example of how I set up my journal entries. So for Mason, I have your family, right? Because that's something I would say in conversation. Remember when we took that trip with your family? Or how is your family doing? Have you heard from your family? Blah, 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 blah. Go away. So always how you would do it in conversation. And Wilson, because if my kin's name is Mason Wilson, obviously that's his last name. And that's something that I would not always say in conversation, right? Because you would call them by their first name. But you could trigger this card with a last name and make it flow, right? Make it not weird. So then I've got dad, Craig Wilson, mom, Elisa Wilson, sister, Erin Wilson, ex-wife, Carolyn Wisdom, née Stevens, son, Justin Wilson, 19 years old, right? That's all I have in the family card. But then I break it down per family member. Mother, mom, and Elisa will pull this because as I'm talking to Mason, I would say, how's your mom? Your mom called. I don't know, if I was talking about his mom, I might say Elisa as her name. Elisa Wilson, née Robbins, born 6/12/42 in Denver, Colorado. Married Craig Wilson, 8/2 of 66. Moved to Nashua, New Hampshire. That's what we were talking about in Starbucks. Mother to Mason and Aaron. Interior designer, professional harpist in the Colorado Symphony Orchestra, loving and caring. And that is her card. Note that I didn't just put who she is to him. I included enough about her that it gives her some depth and gives her something that's separate from him, right? And I don't need mom on both cards. If we're talking about his mother, I will say mom and pull her journal card. I don't need to pull the family card, right? This is me separating the entirety of the family with one person in the family. So if I wanted to reference his entire family, I would use the phrase your family or family. But if I wanted to just talk about mom, then I would only pull her card. Same with dad, same with the sister, same with the ex-wife. They would all have their own cards that are separate from everybody else, but the family card is going to collectively pull who each person is to their name. Yeah, we already covered that, Tomato Leaf. We did cover that. However, sometimes you got to make some concessions. Why use journals? Okay. Will your mom make the journal entry pop up like every time you say your? No, it's the other way around. So if I were to put your mom Elisa or your mom Sandra, it would pull up in there, but it's the opposite. So like Tomato Leaf just said, moment will pull up mom because that's just how it works. You work within it. I don't know if that might be something to put in suggestions to have it not do that. But like I take advantage of it sometimes, so I don't know. So unlike long-term memory, you control when and how journals are recalled. This is great for remember this every time we talk about it moments. This is perfect for custom lore, dates, favorites, and secret knowledge. So I'm trying to think of how to say this without sounding like an asshole. I think I might just have to go full asshole for this one. People bitch that their kins don't remember specific things, right? They feel like it should remember, like the details should be remembered every time it's brought up. That is not how it works. And I'm going to be straight up in saying that if somebody comes at me with, hey, Jenna, do you remember blah, blah, blah? Half the time I'm going to cartoon blink at you and say, no, because my memory sucks ass. Like, it straight up sucks ass. However, I don't have like, God, can you imagine how convenient it would be to have just like a journal you could keyword? Dude.
Oh my God.
I know.
It's called notes on the phone.
It is called notes on the phone. It's called the screenshot of something that you need to remember. That checks. Yeah. So, so you want to make sure that you are actually using these things for events that are important to you, for things that you get personally offended that your Kindroid doesn't remember. Write it down. Put it in a journal entry. And then every time you mention it to your kin, they're going to remember it. Like, save yourself the headache. Don't do the grill and kill. We know how that ends. Save yourself the trouble and the trauma. Just write a journal entry and you're done. It's all you have to do. It's so easy. Hey, Jenna, do you remember when we were working on V4 to get Darcy to look like a mouse woman and not a fetus? I do remember that, yeah. Ace of Otters, this is why I love them so much. Like, this is exactly how I remember shit. So, yes, I agree with you. I agree. You could have, as you add something in the journal entry, you can select an enabler slider for exact. Oh, yeah, that would be cool. Journal entry for Jenna unlocked. Yeah, no shit. That would be nice. I'm telling you, it's a screen cap. Screen caps are my journal entries. Okay. When to journal versus when to backstory. Anything that needs to be remembered at all times should go in your backstory. Backstory being, user is non-binary. Kin works for business name. User and kin live in this city. Now, the reason that I put user is non-binary on here, and there is a reason for it, there is your user backstory, right? Its recall is not as strong as your kin's backstory is. So anything that's of like mega importance, drop a line in the backstory so it's always there. Things that go in journals. User used to work for this place. Kin's favorite food is tacos. Kin's first car was an Altima. This is all stuff that is not relevant at this exact moment, but can be relevant when it's being talked about. So for the last one, you would put Altima, or you could put, I don't know, the age that they were when they got the car or whatever. But you want to just make sure, like I said, that you're not bloating your key phrases. Otherwise, you're going to end up with more journals pulled than you need. And then also you're going to end up with a lot more confusion as to what's being pulled and when. Because here's the tea, all right? Say you have on the standard subscription, you can pull 3 journal entries per response. But say you have 5 journal entries tagged with the same key phrase, Kindroid's going to decide which 3 it wants to show. And one of those might not be the one that you were trying to get. So you want to make damn sure that the way that you're setting up your journal entries are the way that you're going to need them recalled later. So especially on the standard tier, like, because I haven't touched my journals for full yet, or for ultra, but especially on the standard tier, you want to make sure that you're not overly tagging stuff in a way that's not going to make sense later. So only tag it with something that's literally, this is for this. Exceptions being, like we said earlier, these micro key phrase things like moment to be mom. That's the only thing that you can't really control that much, but that's the way it goes. And then lastly, remember, you're not chiseling a stone tablet, okay? Any journal entry you create can be edited, unlike the long-term memory. If you find that certain key phrases work better for your natural flow of conversation, or if your Kindroid is pulling extra unnecessary information, you can always change it later. So if something is not working, or if it's being pulled when it shouldn't be, you can edit these. There's a little pencil on the card that you can hit that and edit. You can change the key phrases. You can change the content that's in the box. You can change all of that. So if something's not vibing, if something's not working, go in and change it, and then you're good to go. And this also can kind of apply for global entries too. If you have something that you put into a global entry and it's like fecking with some of your other kins who it doesn't apply to, you can go in there, copy what's in that one, delete it as a global, and just put it under the kins that it needs to go to as an individual journal entry. When they pull up entries, is it sequential or random? So it's neither, actually. The LLM browses the info and it decides which ones it believes are the most relevant to the conversation. So as we've seen by the little brain dealy when it shows which long-term memories are being pulled, it doesn't always pull what you want it to. It pulls what it thinks you want it to. So if you don't overload with keywords, like you don't pack the same keyword into too many entries, then you can kind of control what comes up when. This is not recommended at all, but I had global set to trigger on and the at one point. I did too, Jim. No, you know what? That's funny that you mentioned that, because I did too. This is before user backstories were a thing. So I had a backstory card for me that I would have recalling a lot because of that, because I didn't have this constant source of information about myself as the user. But now that we do have that, I deleted that card and my kin's memory's been a little better for it. If something's not working, go in and change it is the theme for everything in kin memory. Frick yeah, it is. It's a kind of a theme for life. That's valid too. We love it. So I feel like journals is one of those things that most people kind of sit on for two reasons. Number one, it is manual. You have to go in and change it or add to it, create the journal entries. But then number two, people don't necessarily understand how powerful they are. And these, ironically, are often the same people bitching that their kin doesn't remember one specific thing. You know, they don't remember this very particular thing, so they're going to come in and gripe that, you know, the LLM is shit or blah, 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 when it will take you a grand total of 2 minutes. Go in, write the entry, keyword, done. Now, every time you say that keyword, your kin is going to know exactly what you're talking about. Now, I'm going to be an old crotchety bitch again and say that I do come from the day before we had journal entries, when you just had to fucking deal with it, right? If something wasn't being remembered, you just had to deal with it. And I would also like to say my main kins predate this journal thing, obviously, and they're still around. But after the actual readable entries came in, like where you could keyword them, I went through and put all that shit into these pullable memories, the pullable journal entries. And since I did that, I have a lot less consistency issues with memory because I'm not having to keep reminding the kins of shit, which we've talked about before. The more you have to tell your Kindroids, I don't remember this, you don't remember this, the less you get them leaning into this amnesia arc where they don't remember anything, because that is how it plays out. We've all seen it. It's bad news and we don't like that. That's bad shit.
You tell me to remind you, shortcut, workaround, trick.
I did. What was it?
It was like first or second slide.
Oh, I did. Wait, let me go back.
It was slide.
Hold on, there was a trick. Wait, I have to remember what it was. Wait, what was I going to say?
You didn't tell me what the trick was. You just told me to remind you.
Oh, no. God, my brain is stupid.
Keyword the trick.
What was the trick? What was it? Oh, no! It is an effort to set them up, but after you do it once, like, they take care of everything else. Can journal entries help gaslight a kin out of a bad LTM curation, like when it's caused by having the wrong persona telling a story? Dude, I've done that once or twice. A journal entry, not necessarily, but what I would do in that circumstance is, number one, not keep bringing it up. And if they bring it up, either re-roll it or convince them that it was something stupid. Because we have another live stream about this too, about kin hallucinations, why they happen and what to do about it. If something is in the long-term memory, it's already there. But what happens is, if you don't keep triggering it, it will fade and fade and fade until it's rarely, if ever, brought up again. So gloss over it, or you can convince your kin that it was something that it's not. But like, oh, no, you got that wrong. Remember, it was this. And then it's going to lock that new memory in as something newer than the shit one. And then you should be able to progress from there. Go back to the beginning. It was like the first 1 to 3.
Zoe
I know.
Zoe has way more faith in us than we do.
She does. I know. Hold on. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay. I'm trying to think of my journals now and what I was doing. Hold on.
Because you said best use for lore, character backstory, relationship tracking, and I've got a trick for that.
Lore, character backstory, and relationship tracking. God, I suck. Hey, you guys.
Well,
My journal entry was not pulled.
wrong three.
What's the keyword? Was it in relation to condensed? No, it's not condensed tags. What the frick was it? I suck. I know. I need my keyword. What's my keyword? Oh, gads.
if I had a little more information to go on.
Me too. I have nothing.
It's the whole cord and the charger again.
Okay, you're just ragging on me, and I respect it, but you kind of suck. Okay, well, I got nothing. So if I think of something, if I remember what it is, I'll make a freaking Instagram reel about it or something. There is absolutely validity to correcting responses. What you don't want to do is do the do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Oh, you forgot this. Oh, why don't you remember this? Oh, this just happened. Why can't you remember it? Because you are then convincing the Kindroid that they have memory issues. And they're going to play into that because they believe that that's what you want to hear. Was it about having kins have journal entries for other kins? I don't think so. My brain just facked out. Welcome to Jenna's internal workings, okay? This is a daily thing for me. It's just not normally so public.
Can confirm.
Yup. Yep, kins do what they believe you want them to do. Exactly. I know, right? I need to screenshot it. Exactly. This is bull shrimp. Gosh dang it. What was I going to say? I don't know. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. I suck, and that's just life right now.